You can put your video and you can go on.
I want to welcome everybody back to our second presentation. Let's open with a word of prayer. Dear Lord, we thank you for your continued watch care and your goodness towards us. As we continue to explore our relationship with you, with one another, and how we relate to our environment, bless us. In our weakness and our frailty, in our ignorance, we know that you can't overlook these things, but you have a special way of taking care of us through these difficult periods. Help each of us. Help me to afford the grace to others that you give to me. In Jesus' name, amen. I had a couple of questions. Some of them are related to our study and some of them are not. Question 1. This relates to a previous study that I did. About the environment. This was in Slovakia in July. And it's dealing with the change of environment. Question is, was it optional or necessary for God to change the environment after sin? Let's see, we get a collective answer. Put your hands up if you think it was necessary for the environment to change.
Oh, keep that up.
And put your hands up if it was unnecessary. So everybody says here in our group, it was necessary for the environment to change after sin occurred. So the answer is yes, it was necessary. So we're all in agreement with that. So a related question that I'm going to ask. Why? Why change the environment? If plants can suffer, we know that they perhaps don't have a consciousness, but if you're a gardener or you study nature, you know that plants react to stress. So they have an awareness of their surroundings. So plants suffer. We certainly know that animals suffer, which is what we will call the environment. All that pain and suffering that's brought upon the environment because humans sinned. Why?
Adjustment.
Adjustment. Adjustment for whom?
For the humans. Because
So Manuel said adjustment for the humans.
although they were not infinite beings, they were conditional. After sin, they become finite. And so they were not suited for permanent for a permanent environment, for an eternal
Okay.
environment.
It was for the humans. So I'll leave that point there. Chrissy?
Stress will help us change and grow, like it would for a plant. You stress the plant out by trimming it and it grows better.
Can you explain what you just said? I understand the analogy of the stressing plants. So the environment is changed to its detriment. And why?
To help us grow and learn things.
So the environment changes to help and aid human beings. To do what? Help them.
Hey, so, Ellen might say that it was to keep them from getting into trouble.
So Christine says it's to help humans to keep out of trouble. Okay. I won't ask you how and why, but it's an interesting point to keep us out of trouble. Lena?
I think it is to contain the damage,
Go ahead.
to contain the damage.
So Lena said to contain the damage. Can you define containment? The geography of containment?
Planet Earth. Planet Earth.
So Lena says the environment changed to contain the damage to Earth.
Not damage to Earth, but damage
Yes, contain the damage within the sphere of the Earth.
from the universe.
Yes, that's right. And what was the damage that you're containing?
People don't do it that long. to not perpetuate, say, not to say, to not perpetuate, but to not.
Tell me what the damage was that's going to be contained.
Human being is the most dangerous. And
So human beings have now become dangerous and they're going to be contained on the earth. Have I expressed that satisfactorily? On a scale of 1 to 10 of importance, no, not 1 to 10, 0 to 1, scale of importance, 0 to 1. Where do humans rank? I'll just say, where would they rank? With that? No, on a scale of 0 to 1. We've just described. Oh, go ahead, translate. Follow along with the questions. The environment was changed for human beings. We agree with that. Environment includes plants and animals. It was necessary. What's the purpose of it all? We'll put the answer. Oops. To help humans. We're okay with that answer? So now I'm asking, on the scale of 0 to 1, where are humans? Okay, humans are here. And what value do animals have? Where do we get 0.5 from?
I don't want to say 0.
Because you've got biases. And you don't want to say what's so obvious. I know for animal lovers or gardeners, or people who love the environment, that this is a difficult saying. The question is it a true saying? All these created beings, plants and animals, who did nothing wrong, they've all been changed for one purpose: to serve human beings. And how fair is that? How fair is that? If you say it's not fair, God designed this, God's doing all of this, so God's not fair. Just so that you know what you're saying if you say it's not fair. So, how fair is it?
That's fair.
Very fair. How reasonable is it? Very reasonable. If God's doing it, isn't God a reasonable person? Lena,
I'm not sure if it is to help humans.
okay, so Lena says perhaps it's not to help humans.
It is to help both humans.
The environment changed. Do you agree with that? God changed it. Do you agree with that? It didn't change by itself. So Lena agrees with all of those things. So the answer to question 2 is what?
To help both.
To help animals and plants.
And humans.
We've already got the humans. So human sin and animals now are going to change. And how does that help them to be subjugated, murdered, violated? To feel cold. Okay, I'll put a question mark there then. So the question was it optional or necessary for God to change the environment? Everybody says it was necessary. And I assume we mean that it's necessary for humans. And everything gets dragged through the mire because of us. And as the Bible says, I think in King James, all creation groaneth. Eva, you had your hand up?
Oh, no, I just wanted to double check and when you said it's fair and reasonable.
Okay, so do you agree that God is fair and reasonable? Everybody said yes to that question. Put your hands up if you were lying. When you look at your pet. When you go into, we watch some documentary about trawler fishing or whatever it is, or safaris. No one's going to put their hand up that they were lying. Okay. It's hard. Kathy said it's hard to watch, but my question is it hard to lie? Is it hard to stomach what God did?
Yeah.
Alyssa?
So is it possible that animals and plants in the environment are also a part of restoration? So for this question to be correct,
So the question is it possible that animals and plants are going to be restored through all of this? What's the question that, I don't know if you know the word flummox or disturbs people when it comes to people like us lot, us crazy people? Who say that God is fair and reasonable. What's the question that comes up over and over again? So Kathy said is why is there so much suffering? And Christine's going to refine that and say,
Why does God allow it?
why does God allow it? It's much worse than that. It's the suffering of the innocent, not the guilty. So if you knew that, Alyssa, those animals and plants were the innocent. So you don't mind. So this said it depends. Those humans are scoffing down apples. And what did that poor rabbit do? What guilt did the rabbit have?
Not knowing God.
And this said the rabbit didn't know God. And we can all put our hand up and say we disagree with her, can't we? Because the rabbit was really cool with God, understood God perfectly well. In rabbit world. And so was the grass and the trees.
And the innocent people.
There weren't any innocent people.
Oh, not at that time. I'm thinking later. Okay.
The environment changes at that moment when 100% of the human race goes crazy. Okay?
I was answering at a different time.
We'll stick to that time.
Perfect harmony. Rabbits get along with God. Yes, I agree.
So we're all comfortable, because God's fair and reasonable, that the harming of innocence is acceptable. For the greater good. Of the human race. The greater good of the human race, the suffering of innocence is acceptable. It's not even acceptable. It's necessary. Now who's going to be honest and say they agree with that? Oh, you put your hands up, you agree. Victoria, you agree. You agree it's necessary for innocent beings to suffer for you. Christ did it. Everybody agree with that argument? Christ did it? Susan doesn't agree? Not that it's not truthful, it's a correct statement. I'm guessing you don't agree with the logic.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
Christine?
What's a good, that I do agree, I'm not sure exactly.
You, no, you don't have to comment on her. You had your own hand up for your own
Okay.
reason. Sir? Do you want to say something?
Just that. It's. It's so we can all see the. Problems with sin, we can't see that. And sin will happen again, right?
So Christine said it so that we can understand the consequences of sin. So either we haven't fully processed where we're going or what we're saying, or we're lying, or we're really mature in our understanding of the plan of salvation. Because if you hear what you've just said, and we just spoke about some apple tree, if you're speaking about an apple tree, you can equally be speaking about a 3-month-old child, or a minus 3-month-old being. And it all works the same. Because we all have to live under law. And the laws have to be applied in the same way. So now God can get away with murder. It's all good. As soon as we start focusing on a goldfish. So it may be a bit too much to do it in real time, but as you go through your day, your week, your life, think about what you're actually agreeing to. Because these are the challenges that have confronted people who think, philosophers, and I would say the vast majority of humanity who are essentially atheist. And they could be atheists, they don't believe in God. And I'm just going to give my own sort of quirky definition of atheism, that they fear God. But we all seem to be much more mature than that. So what we're buying into is not the necessity of suffering. It's the necessity of the suffering of the innocent. For your benefit. For all you guilty people. Okay, next question, unless someone's got a comment.
So the object is to create guilt. Bidding for.
Guilt. So the question was, is the object to create guilt? The answer is no. Guilt isn't something you create, it's a consequence of an experience.
No, I mean, God, when he changes the environment, create guilt in humanity, so that humanity can see.
I understand what you meant.
Ah.
I'm saying you cannot create guilt. Guilt is something you experience because of something that you go through. So I think most of us don't feel that guilty about the environment.
Guilty about the innocent.
Feeling guilty about the innocent, people have trouble with. You probably read that Adam wept, I think, over a dying leaf, I think it was. And his sorrow was worse than, I think, the loss of a child to a parent. I think she describes it in that kind of way. Next question. The great test. Is it moral or prophetic? Answer? Someone said both. Someone else said nothing. So is the answer both?
Well, it's prophetic, but personal is prophetic, therefore morals, it's prophetic to be moral.
I have no idea what you just said. I'm sorry.
So the great test is prophetic.
Is it both or not both?
I think it is because the personal is political, the political is prophetic. Therefore, personal is prophetic.
The political is prophetic and the personal is prophetic. And what's that got to do with the moral? Alyssa says that the moral is personal and the prophetic is political. I don't even understand what that means. Sorry.
So if we know that the personal is political,
Yeah, I got that.
then the now maybe explain it differently. It's prophetic to do the right thing.
It's prophetic to do the right thing. Okay, I'm going to start with both. I don't understand, sorry. Susan was smiling.
Pardon me?
You smiled a minute ago.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So do you agree with both?
Yes.
I hope my logic is correct. For someone to say it's both, that must infer that the moral and prophetic are two different things.
I guess that's what I was getting at. I'm not.
If they're the same thing, then it couldn't be both. just logically. So if you agree with both, tell me the difference between morality and prophecy.
Well, the only way,
Go ahead.
so the only way we understood what was moral to God was through the prophetic narrative. It gave us our moral compass.
So Susan said the only way we understand what is moral is through prophecy.
Was through prophecy, yeah.
So you can't understand morality without prophecy.
Well, everybody's morality would be a different standard.
So if we took prophecy out, everybody's morality would be different.
Pretty much.
So if I said, don't lie, is that morality?
Could be ethical.
Is there a difference between ethics and morality? Okay. You tell me a moral thing then, if lying isn't moral.
Marriage between a man and a woman.
So the marriage union is morality.
The view of it.
Specifically.
Two people marrying, that's morality.
The traditional view of it.
I know I'm asking you, give me a definition of morality, not a traditional view, just a definition of, I said lying is a moral issue. You said it might not be, it might be an ethical issue. I thought, oh, so then I should give me an example of morality.
Right or wrong.
Right or wrong? Isn't lying about right and wrong?
So many shades of gray line. But
No, there might be different types of lies, but a lie is not the truth.
correct.
So it would be about right and wrong, the truth or not the truth.
Yeah.
So if you lied, you would know that you've lied because you know you haven't told the truth. Cannot you and I know that a lie has happened outside of a prophetic event or outside of prophecy?
Yes.
So you don't need prophecy to understand morality.
Yes.
So the great test is a specific issue. I understand that. If we separate morality from prophecy, and we say that they're two different things, because we said it's both, then I was trying to ask what the difference between them was. And it seems to me we can understand morality easily outside of prophecy. We could understand set the great test. What do you understand the great test to be? It is very simply. So you say the great test is gender. So equality is too easy. So we'll go with gender. So if you go to the golden rule, which is found where?
Happy.
Matthew?
One.
First John 4.
First John, you don't like First John? Matthew what?
I don't remember.
That's cheating, I can't remember. First John. Anyone else? Okay, someone check that. You agreed that that's the golden rule. We're going to check because none of us are sure.
I was thinking it was 420.
420.
Matthew 7:12. Matthew 7:12.
Therefore, things whatsoever you would do that mention do unto you, do you even so to them. Okay. So we got Matthew 7, verse 12. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So, Susan, we've said gender. Whatever that meant in a particular situation, if you said to someone, treat this person in a particular way, a good way, despite their gender, and they'd say, no way, not doing that. I'm not going to treat them properly. You would say to them, go to a 2,000-year-old verse and put yourself in their place. And then ask yourself how you would want people to treat you. And you'd get the right answer. You've passed the great test. Way outside of what's going on today. So we don't need to understand all the affairs that are going on, we'll just say in the USA, to understand morality. That was meant to be a question. More than anything. That was my question to you. Do we?
So that wasn't rhetorical.
No, I guess it depends on your answer. If you're going to say, well, of course not, then it's rhetorically in that sense. I'm sorry, my translators, I shouldn't do that. So it was a genuine question. It wasn't meant to be a statement. It was a compliment to you to say, I think you know what right and wrong is without reading the newspapers. Without seeing what the Supreme Court or SCOTUS is doing, you know what's right and wrong just from that one verse. So you don't need all this noise or paraphernalia going all around us to know what is right and wrong. So the great test, is it a moral or a prophetic test? The answer has to be Susan just told us. Moral. It has to be a moral test. You have to be a clever Adventist to squeeze out of the fourth commandment some kind of morality. And Adventists will shift and squirm, and they find it very difficult to do that. But they're not honest. We've got it easy. We scrap that Sabbath test, and we just make it a test about how you treat people. So the great test is what it's always been. Which is what? A new commandment I give you, that you love one another. Without the second bit, you'd have no idea what that means. But you treat people the way Jesus treats you. And that's the golden rule, isn't it? It's never changed. All through history. It's just looked different in different dispensations, if I can say it that way. So the great test has to be moral. And this movement has said for the last 30 plus years, nope, the great test is prophetic. And is that wrong? No,
No,
because this movement doesn't get things wrong.
because in
Go ahead.
previous presentations, I hear you saying that prophetic is morality. Morality is prophecy.
Good. I like that. Sounds good if I said it. Prophecy is morality. Morality is prophecy. Okay. It's beyond the scope of our study today to tidy up the loose ends. Of this important question that's eluded many of us for too long. So we need to understand and explain the prophetic bit. But I want us to see that the great test has to be moral. It is moral, and it's always been moral. And the problem that confronts Adventism is it's very difficult to dovetail the Sabbath into all of that. Okay, so we'll leave that that question hanging. So I don't understand this question. Someone asked about 9/11 and clarification. So I can't answer that one because I don't actually understand what the question is. So whoever asked that question, maybe they can ask it again. Okay, so that's all the questions that I had. Coming back to our discussion that we had this morning. We spoke about biases. So what's a kind of a classic definition of bias? I asked you, what is a bias?
Preconceived idea.
Sorry? Preconceived idea. Is that the right spelling? EI? Yep.
Yeah.
So a preconceived idea, anyone else? Well, there's a bit more toxicity to it than that. Preconceived is pretty neutral. Prejudice, that's a good word. So we're prejudicial. So is having prejudice good or bad?
It depends.
It depends. So is it good to be biased then? Yes, it's good to be biased.
Yeah.
Everybody agree it's good to be biased? Sorry? So depends means yes, as well as no. If you're biased and you have prejudice, which means you have favoritism, are we okay with the word favoritism? Yes, is that favoritism? You okay with Susan? You okay with that?
The way, yeah.
Are you okay with the way I spelled it or not okay with the way I spelled it? Okay, tell me how you spelled it then. FAVOUR. Oh, it's right.
Yeah, well, the U is the British spell.
What would you expect?
Yeah.
That was your bias test, which you failed. Okay. No, it was my test. I'm not biased. Okay, so people said bias is good. So if you've got all these biases and you say it can be good, then you don't agree with equality. How can you have equality if you're biased? Can you?
No, no.
You can?
So
Oh, we can and we can't. Sorry?
She might have some reasoning that I haven't thought of yet.
Alyssa says you can be biased and still be a proponent of treating people equally the same, which means no favoritism, no prejudice, no preconceived ideas, I think.
If biases are inbuilt, then we can recognize that they're part of us. We don't have to be ruled by them.
Okay, so Alyssa is a proponent that biases are inbuilt within us. They're part of our nature. Not just nurture. The problem with that is 99% of everything you're ever going to read disagrees with that. However psychologists or sociologists will phrase it, they'll tell you it's educated into you. Go on, Victoria.
So they do graph the list, and that,
They did?
yeah, and that being aware of your biases, I mean, we have them, and being aware of them helps us to how can I put it? To not be,
Controlled by them?
yes.
Okay. So before we translate what Victoria said, she said we have biases and we need to be able to control them or manage them. Is that what you said, sort of?
Or rid them, but I mean, if you being educated or aware of your biases, it helps in the process to, confront.
Okay, so you have biases, you need to be made aware of them, then you need to confront them.
Yeah. I don't know if confront is the right way to put it, but to unlearn. Yeah, unlearn.
Manage them.
Man,
So I think everybody would agree with that. But what Alyssa said wasn't any of that. My question to you then, Victoria, where did the biases come from?
They were learned.
They were learned. Alyssa, where did the biases come from? Some of them, the ones you refer to.
wait,
From our genes.
Do you see the difference, Victoria? Alyssa said they're part of our construction. And most scientists will tell you, like 99%, that they are cultivated, educated. Susan.
Well,
Susan.
you mentioned that we're hardwired for them.
Okay. I mentioned that we're hardwired, but I want to make sure that everybody knows most social scientists disagree with that. They don't agree.
And when you mention that, thought about the way we organize material from infancy onward. And we're a blank slate when we're born, like John Locke says, I think. And the input gets filed. And that's where our fast brain goes wrong. Because we file all flat surfaces of desks or stools and chairs, and anything with legs is a chair. Before long, when you file like that, so you can retrieve information. You've generalized, you've put things in groups where you form bias.
Let's try and summarize what you've just said. You're born with like a blank sheet of paper. And then as you live your life, you populate that clean sheet of paper. You write things on it. So that all sounds like the environment teaching you or training you what about how you're supposed to operate in this world. And Alyssa says you're not born as a blank sheet of paper. That's the difference. I don't have a demo piece. If I had a piece of paper, maybe I could just show you. So we'll give me a piece of paper. Let me tell you what I think is happening. Let me see if I can see myself properly. Okay, so this is this blank sheet of paper. Forget the lines. This is what you're born as. This is what Susan said. Yeah. And as you grow up, you're going to write on this piece of paper all the different things, and it tells you like how you're supposed to function. It's like an instruction manual, how you're supposed to operate in the world. Yeah. That was like the flat surface example that you gave.
3D senses.
So I think what Alyssa is trying to explain is for sure you're born with sort of no information about your environment. You don't know that. Babies aren't born with all of that information built into them. But I think what Alyssa is trying to say is that when you're born, you're like this. You're not a flat sheet of paper, it's crinkled or creased. And however hard you're going to try to write onto that surface, there's no way you're going to be able to easily write from that side of the paper across this ridge to the other. You have things that are pre-built, pre-wired, hardwired. These creases. And whatever you do when you write onto that paper, onto your brain, you can't write cleanly. So I know the lines are this way. So maybe if I did it, maybe if I fold the paper this way. So here you're going to write. But when you write, you can only write on this piece, then you have to have sort of a break and skip over and write here and skip over and write there. You'll have these breaks that are hardwired into the paper. So if you can imagine those hardwired biases as these creases, that are not undoable. You can't fix them. And these creases have an effect that if you're aware of them, you can kind of go over this bit, skip over that blurred bit and carry on. But it's always going to be there. I'll give an example before I take your question. So you've probably noticed to a degree, a baby is happy in its parents' arms. More often than not, it's the mother because they breastfeed. You say, oh, can I hold your baby? And the baby begins to cry when you hold it. And you've done nothing wrong to the child. You try and comfort it and coo it, and it still doesn't respond well until it goes back to its mother's arms and it's happy again. Now, some babies are more sensitive to that than others. But there is plenty of research out there now that has shown that this is hardwired into a child. Either within the womb, but definitely once they're born, they either, well, I'll use the word imprint or attached to their mother, to their parents. And it's through sound, through smell, and through sight. Put the child in a different environment, or give it to someone else, and they can see, smell, and hear that it's someone else, and they become upset. Is that a bias?
Yes.
It's a bias because they're prejudiced. But that bias, that prejudice is hardwired into them because it's a protective mechanism. They know the place of safety. And they will want to, like a spring or a rubber band, gravitate back to the place of safety. It's how they are designed. Just like if at any age, if a child, a baby, touches something that's too hot, a reflex action will happen and it will take its arm back. It doesn't need to be taught that. You don't have to tell a baby, don't talk to strangers and wander off. They already know not to do that. So that bias that is pre-built into a child, if the child is white, born to white parents, with white grandparents, living on a white street, in a white town, in a white country, can you see what the problem is? when they're 18 or 6, 7, they see a black person for the first time, you've probably seen it on a movie or a documentary, that they go to their hand and they touch their skin like, this is not normal. There's something wrong. Is that because they're racist? No, it's because all they have ever seen or known are white people. And what happens if you're not careful, and humans are not careful, you have a built-in system which is called fight, flight, or freeze, which means be scared of unusual or strange things. Yeah? And if all you've ever seen are white people, how normal is it for you to be scared of someone of color? So when we speak about biases being hardwired into us, not all of them are, and most of them are weaponized, because you don't just say, oh, black people have a different skin color. You say they're dangerous. And that fear-mongering feeds on our inbuilt natural tendencies or biases. And you can't undo that. The built-in protective mechanism of the unknown or the unusual. But as Victoria said, can't remember how she put it, you have to be informed about your biases, aware. You have to be made aware of them so that you can begin to deal with them. And the reason why I brought up that piece of paper example and about babies is because in our early discussion, many of us were saying that we're sexist or racist or nationalistic because we're all educated in this bad way. That we're bad people. And what I want to suggest is not that we aren't bad, but the roots of that badness, if I can put it that way, are actually something positive. Is it bad to be jealous?
No,
Or to be envious?
yes.
So if it's wrong to be envious, bad, where did that emotion come from? Because God doesn't do anything bad. So that envious emotion must have come from somewhere. And if God didn't create it, it must have been created out of thin air, which we know can't happen. I would suggest that the whole spectrum of emotions that each of us experiences, possesses, are all there for a purpose and they all are good. And the roots of most of the biases which people think are ugly and despicable, the roots of them are also good. And when I say good, when I say good, I mean that they serve a positive purpose. Or a protective mechanism. And when you can view yourself and others like that, it gives you the ability to have better relationships, to treat people better. Any questions or comments?
I have a question. Is fear an emotion?
The question is fear an emotion? I think yes.
So. Does God fear?
Does God
God-
have fear?
Yeah.
Is that your question? Yes. Yes. If you experience fear, then the ability to experience that has also got to be part of God's nature. Whether or not God actually experiences it in the same way that you do, is questionable, especially when you start defining how fear operates and what it is. Most of the time, not all of the time, we're afraid of the unknown. We're afraid of new experiences. We're afraid of the potential of getting hurt. And without discussing God's ability to see into the future, we don't even need to do that. Because God knows so much about so many things, it's very hard for God to be afraid of things, I believe. And that's why you get an athlete or an experienced worker in a dangerous occupation who doesn't have fear.
The reason I asked.
Go ahead.
I read that God has not given us the spirit of fear. And also it says that perfect love casts away fear. So get confused.
So you've mentioned two Bible verses. Perfect love casteth out all fear, and God hasn't given us the spirit of fear. If you were to take those two Bible verses and overlay them with that, with those comments that I made just before that, about what produces fear. It's things like the unknown. I can't remember what the other points I made.
Experiences, getting or being hurt,
Sorry?
getting or being hurt, new experiences.
Yeah. The unknown, new experiences, fear of getting hurt. Sorry, I should say about getting the potential of getting hurt. If you can be taught about those things, the fear dissipates. I think that's what those verses are saying. Fear is being in a sympathetic state, and God wants to take us out of that into a parasympathetic state.
Although his has a sympathetic state too.
Sorry?
Although God has a sympathetic state too.
So
That's
you've said that God has a sympathetic state as well as a parasympathetic state. I agree. Yes.
it was very difficult for me to picture that attribute in God. Fear. Because I sometimes fear. And as a parent, if God fears, the way I feel.
Many people have difficulty
Yeah.
attributing emotions that we feel and giving them to God. But my argument has always been they have to have originated from God. Because we can't create. Did someone have their hand up here over on this side?
But, kind of lost it, but I was just thinking that it would be difficult, with knowing. There was something that was stated earlier, and I don't know if I can bring it back to make sense, but,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Victoria had a point, but she lost it because I rambled on too long. So I wanted to touch upon this issue of biases. I wanted to explain that, I guess like Alyssa, I take it a little further than most social scientists will take it. I'm sure you're all aware that there are things like conscious biases and unconscious biases. And then once we start talking about biases, there's so many different types. And you should all really be aware of, the top, there's hundreds of different types of biases that they've teased out, but you should be aware of the top, 4, 5, 6 types of biases that we all fall prey to very easily. And on top of all of that, what I wanted to add was that I think some of these biases are hardwired or pre-wired into us that you can't eradicate. They're not just educated into you. Who knows some different types of biases? What ones are you aware of?
There's implicit bias.
Tell us what that means. If you're not sure, it's okay. Anyone else? Confirmation bias. And what's that?
The tendency of,
Sorry?
the tendency of people to look for information that is the same as what they are.
So you already have a belief system or a moral compass. And when you get enter into a new situation or you receive new information, you'll tend to filter that through your past experiences. So there's a battle going on between God and Satan. And when you speak about the enemy, you tend to refer to them as them, those people. And that filters all the way down to the struggle that's going on right now in this country between the left and the right, the blue and the red. Because we are so convinced that we are right based upon all of our existing beliefs. Whenever you hear anything from the opposition, you will automatically ignore it or discount it and say, oh, there they go again. And you're not willing to listen to them. We do that in the movement. When we fight or struggle against Adventism or other religions. Why do you say amen for?
What you said, that is done in the book.
No, I understand. I understand the context, but my question is, why do you think it's something good?
May I ask a question? Is a pragmatic person, as a pragmatic person uses confirmation bias?
I don't know. I'm inclined to say no, but I might be wrong.
Because it says that it's based on past experiences.
Based upon past experience, which give you your current belief system.
Exactly, but you have an expectation based on your past experiences. You have an expectation, therefore you are using confirmation bias.
And do you think that's good or bad?
I think it was wonderful.
I think it's really dangerous.
Really?
Yes. (1888). What is the great test?
So,
So I think, oh, someone said Sabbath. And I think that's an example of confirmation bias. I'll stop there unless someone's got a comment. Okay, another one.
First impression bias.
First impression. What does that mean?
That your first impression about somebody or a situation anchors in your mind.
So when you meet somebody for the first time or you experience something for the first time, that serves as an anchor point for all future interactions with that person or in that situation. Yeah, I'm going to give one. This is something that the movement is very guilty of. It's actually the name of it's named after somebody. It's the Dunning-Kruger bias. So I think someone said yes. Did someone say yes? Yeah. So what's this bias? The Dunning-Kruger bias or Dunning-Kruger effect. No need to whisper.
The person's lack of knowledge or skill in a certain area causes them to overestimate their competence.
So I'm going to simplify Alyssa's good answer. People think they're cleverer than they really are. They don't fully appreciate their ignorance. Sorry? Yeah, we don't realize. We think we're very knowledgeable in this movement and we know far less than we probably really do. Anything else? Come on, what about all these angels that keep flying around us? And what do angels have?
Halo.
Halo bias. And what is that? What's halo bias? Holier than thou. Not attitude, because it's about how you feel towards somebody, not how they feel about themselves.
That an example too.
What?
We are all
No, it's not holy. Oh, sorry, that's not. I wouldn't write that. It's not holy. It's halo, like a glow. So the answers that we're given are sort of pretty correct. But a more refined answer would be the following. And this relates back to voting. The problem with democracy is we currently have it in many countries across the world. You take a human, a person, and they have 5 characteristics. Kind, pleasant, rude, aggressive, whatever it might be, whatever descriptor you have for them. Tall. So the halo bias or the halo effect does what? What happens? Someone say something back there?
The positive one would be attractive.
Okay, if it's a positive one, you'd be attracted to them. Someone say something. What ends up happening is you get drawn or you gravitate to one characteristic of that person. And that becomes the definitive or the defining attribute of that person, and you ignore everything else. So the person is clever or wise. And they're very rude. And they're, we'll just say, bad manners. And good hairstyle. So this is all about this bias that we spoke about before. So they have all these wonderful characteristics, and you focus on one that attracts you for some reason, and you ignore all the other ones. And this is the halo effect. So if you pick number 1, the person is clever. And then someone says, oh, but they're rude. You either dismiss it or you placate the issue. You massage or manipulate the data and ignore it. So, as was just demonstrated a minute ago, we're all very familiar with the halo effect. Sorry?
The opposite is the horns effect.
The horns effect, which is?
So if there are wonderful characteristics about a person, but they're rude to you once, that's it. They're bad. They're evil.
So, how do you spell that?
HORNS.
Okay, as it's spelled. There's the horns bias, that a person is really, really nice. You caught them on a bad day once and they were rude to you, and that's how the only way you can ever see them. Okay, I want to stop here. We've answered several questions today. We've spoken about the environment. And that is significant because it deals with the pain of the innocent. We've spoken about the great test, that it's moral. and that we need to understand its relationship to prophecy. We've touched again on biases. We spoke about various types of biases. But the main point I wanted us to grapple with, to try to understand, to come to terms with, is that some, if not most, if not all, of these biases that we have on the board, and the 100+ that we haven't spoken about, that it's oversimplistic to say that these are all educated into us. That it's all nurture. I think some, many, or all of them have their roots them being the biases. These biases have their roots in our construction, the way we were created. Which means they were put there to serve us, to benefit us. At the very root, it's in our nature to be biased, yes. That it's not wrong. But just because we have these traits, it doesn't mean they can't be hijacked or weaponized. And that's what ends up happening with all of the issues that surround the subject of equality. We're over time. I've enjoyed my time together with you all, both here in California and online. I hope everybody has enjoyed themselves. So I hand it over to yourself, or after I close with prayer. For those who have joined us, at the end, we might swap the camera around so you can see everybody here. Let's close with prayer. Holy God, we want to thank you for your goodness and your mercy towards us. As we try to understand your thought processes, not only as you were creating us, but as the great controversy has progressed, and you have had to make decisions which have been described as your strange work. I know that each of us struggles with some of the things that we hear about. Some of the things that you have sanctioned. Help us to be honest to ourselves and to you. So that in learning about you, we can learn about ourselves. And learning about ourselves, we can learn about each other. I pray this for myself and for those kneeled before you. Amen.
So as Parminder said, if you'd like to turn your cameras on, I will turn ours around to set up for everybody to say hi from California.
Nous allons également allumer les nôtres pour que bien nous puissions
Kamera anmachen. Tuko na kuti vanhu vese vatione.